Professor Allam, for your inspirational speech. And now I would like to call the panel of the first session, Professor Zahir Irani, the Dean of the Faculty Management and Law, and Dr. Thaira Shirawi, President Assistant for Marketing, Media and Public Relation, to please take the stage to chair the session. I would also like to call our first keynote speaker, Ms. SAMIA M MELHEM, the Lead Policy Specialist, Transport and ICT, Global Lead of Digital Development Community and Practice, to please take the floor.
Good morning, good morning. It's my pleasure to be able to chair this event, and I won't keep you long, but what I would like to say are a few words. I've been a long associate with Ahlia University for probably 10, 12 years, and it's an outstanding institution and one that I've personally got a lot of affection and close loyalty towards. So I'm really delighted to be at today's conference and to support the ethos of the university and, of course, the ambition of the WASAD conference, and I'm really pleased to be able to open today's session. What I would like to say is I take away 2 points from our introductory speeches. Either take away knowledge or take away some extra weight from the great food that you're going to have during our breaks or during our lunchtime today. So hopefully you'll be able to take away at least one of 2 things during our 2 or 3 days together over the next period. We've got some outstanding keynote speakers today, and we're going to start with Samia, who's going to talk to us from the World Bank's perspective of all things digital, looking at the scope of digital technology from transportation, supply chain, food processing, digital smart cities, and the reach that digital technologies have right across our lives. So I'm very much looking forward to picking up some interesting ideas and thought-provoking initiatives that I can perhaps move forward. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Samia.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Sabah al-khair, everyone. I'm extremely happy and honored to be with you all here. It's my second time in Bahrain. The first time was 10 years ago, and it's amazing to see how your beautiful country has gotten even more beautiful with new buildings, improved education system, and as Dr. Allam said before, this incredible coexistence in peace with different parts of societies. Before I start, I want to thank the government of Bahrain for inviting the World Bank here. I want to thank Ahlia University, and specifically I want to thank Dr. Abdallah for his warm hospitality and Professor Allam for inviting me. I'm here to talk to you about what the World Bank is doing in that space, in that brave new world of digital development. It's on everybody's mind. How can governments govern today in the era where social media is there, where almost everybody is on Facebook, where soon we will have robots helping in manual labor, and how to plan policies such as Vision 2040, 2050 in the most educated and kind of forward-looking way. So this is a bit what I would like to present. In 15 to 20 minutes, I promise to be on time. I've always been a good student, so hopefully I don't see the third sign. So what are the trends in ICT? What is the World Bank strategy in fostering and investing in technology? What does governing in the digital age look like, specifically with a focus on our region? And how do we invest in sustainability of all these systems? And then I'm sure we will talk about collaboration as we have the question and answer. So today, as you all know, technologies are everywhere. And this is a revolution that has taken the world by storm. In the last 20 years, everything has been completely changed and revolutionized with technology, whether it's transportation, with intelligent transport system, sensors, supply chain, whether it's cities getting smarter and more connected, or using big data and analytics to forecast and predict. When we look at land, agri-tech, land management, mapping, how to use sensors to better crop management with fertilizers and pesticides, whether it's trade and commerce, whether it's health, big topic for all of us, or education, really relevant to most of you, or how to use energy more efficiently. Technology is everywhere. Before I move further, I'd just like to have a show of hand whom amongst our guests are from the government, just to know, from government, okay. From academia, okay, okay, very good. And from private sector, very good. We have a very good distribution, I think, in this room, and that would be useful for how I pitch this presentation. As Professor Alam said, the World Bank last year issued the World Development Report, and the topic was digital dividends. What are the dividends countries can reap from digital? And basically, it's the first time ever for the last 60 years the World Bank has been around that we focus on technology. And you can see that despite all the progress we all know, especially in this area where Bahrain, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar are really leading in terms of usage of smartphone, in terms of consumption of digital, we are still very far as a global entity in where we would like to be. Today, the internet remains available to almost half the world. The people with access to broadband access, which we're all lucky to have, are only 1.1 billion out of the 7.5, 7.2 estimated global population. Only 3.2 billion people have internet access, and this is even not high speed, and the rest do not. So in a world where, as the Kingdom of Bahrain is thinking, one of the pillars of its 2030 strategy is fairness, how can we allow a fair access to internet that is accessible and affordable to all? There is a significant gap between different countries. And here you can see the big gap between also rural and urban. Let me see if this works. Yes, oops, sorry. Rural, urban, and the gender divide. Whereas population get more isolated and more poor, you will have a disproportionate, sorry, okay. You will have a lot of people that will be excluded. The World Bank, as you know, is one of the big lenders. We lend to countries, and when the countries are in the lower income level, we have a series of instruments from grant to credit. Credit are loans with zero interest rate, reimbursable 15 years down the road. And more our clients, who are typically ministers of finance, are requesting us to help invest in digital development, in investing in the ICT sector, but also in mainstreaming technology in the main sectors. And I'm going to skip this, but you can see here that more than 74% of each one of the World Bank loans have now significant ICT components. And the ones that are really leading the way are those about governance, public sector administration. How do you modernize government? They have incredible amounts of technology. Our three pillars in this ICT space is the, first of all, connect, because you cannot do anything if you're not connected, especially as an administration, as a government. And the more decentralized you are, the more connectivity you need so that decentralization works. The second one is transformation. How is technology helping government leapfrog? Sometimes, as you know, governments use laws and legislations that is very old. One of my clients, who used to be a French colony, they are very proud to use processes from 1904. Now, you all know 1904, everything was on paper. You had to go and get stamps for every step of the transaction. I think for all of us who are using WhatsApp, who are using social media, who are using email in our private life, such a discrepancy with government procedures based on 100-year-old laws are no longer acceptable, especially for the young people. The third element, and the two speakers before me touched base on this, is innovation. How do we embed in government processes, in public administration, the incredible innovation that we see in the private sector? And this is not obvious. Governments have to make a lot of effort. They have to go out of their way to embed that innovation within their own administration. And many of them have to fight their own so that the change happens. And they have to keep fighting so the change is sustained long enough in time so people forget how it was in the old way. And how does this get funded every year with a line budget to maintain that whole change management is a big challenge for many of you. So in the last report that the World Bank wrote, which gave us a lot of publicity and spotlight actually on both the challenges and opportunity in digital transformation, what we have seen is there are huge opportunities but also incredible risks. And governments, until now, in general, in all countries, have not been able to really leverage technology to be more effective and perform better. Because a lot of what they need to do is really not in the digital space. It's what we call the complements that are in the analog, in the non-digital space. The institutions, the structures, the processes, the culture, and the very essence that sometimes make public administration what it is. So what are the analog foundation for a digital economy? 3 big areas that dominate that framework, and I will be very happy to send you links. This is all available as PDF in many languages. The regulations, so how do we promote the entry, the competition, the competitiveness, as the speaker from Bahrain said, another one of the pillar of 2030. How to leverage skills for digital opportunities, and what is the role of universities like Ahlia and many others that are representative here. I think the speaker after me will speak more of that. And then how to transform institutions which are big and sometimes opposed to change so that they are capable and accountable to leverage technology in the digital age and use technology to deliver. And here we have ranked countries through 3 stages: emerging, transitioning, and transforming. And of course, everybody wants to get to transforming. So the key is, how do we embed in our national strategy that is maybe looking at energy or extractive or education, these core elements of that digital transformation? So what are the global findings? Citizens use e-government or digital government mostly for getting information, not transacting. Because again, most of the transactions are still not reformed. They're still done the same way last century or last 2 centuries. The use of digital government is very slow because the services are not there. And lots of failures, not enough of involvement in the design of these with citizens, with civil societies. The administrative reform and the legislative change to allow for digital to happen is often lacking, and sometimes you have great successes and they're happening for 2-3 years, but they're not sustained. Or you have very good pilots that happen in a small city, but instead of reaching the other 20 cities, they just die because there's not enough budget for it. And how to also, equivalent to that, how to embed in government that culture of data, that data is important. We have data science now helping government do more predictions and analyze and help be proactive. Digital by default, sharing documents amongst different agencies, end-to-end digital, automation of some processes, yet individualize it to the person's taste. Let's say to that person who lives in that city, who is of a certain age, who is of a certain job specialty, and who would like to get information his or her way automatically sent. When you think of Amazon for government to business, how you order something, it gets to you right away. When you think of Facebook, right? Any users of Facebook here? Many people tell you, well, you know, it takes me so long to register my child. I work a lot in Africa, and it's a challenge to register a child. And then to go through all the life cycle of a citizen. Went to school, got married, had a kid, traveled, came back, unfortunately got a divorce. You know, from birth to death, the life cycle of a citizen which are not very different for all of us, right? Somehow, around the world, to my big consternation, in the same country, you sometimes have 500 ways to register a child. And so much time and effort is spent just on agreeing on that procedure, as opposed to agreeing on something and then rolling it out and improving it as time goes by. Because this is really a practice that private sector has embraced a long time ago. You know, best of breed, best practices, and then you keep improving that process. And that's an area governments need to get to. The other area that plagues government is the fragmentation. You have oftentimes the same applications replicated in each agency, and that takes a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of data entry, and none of these systems talk to one another. So in an ideal digital government setting, if you will, you have the basic foundation shared by all, the registries. This is the infrastructure, the security, the access, and then you have the IDs, the people, the land, the business, the assets, shared by all. So not everybody has to register again and again with different agencies. And then you have the particular specialized services for each agency, whether you're doing education and learning, healthcare, tourism, etc. But you have that foundational base that is a whole of government approach, breaking all the silos and giving each one of the government agencies a comprehensive view of its population, of its land, of its assets. And digital government has several angles, and that's why it's so difficult to realize, because we don't have a bottom line like public sector. But you have these 8 areas of focus that are so important. Obviously, for me at the top, and this is my personal opinion, it is leadership. You really need the top-down leadership to kind of force agencies and people to get out of their comfort zone and work together. And obviously, the bigger the government is, the more difficult that is. The more players are at stake, the more legacy exists. The user focus, which is oftentimes why things fail, talk to the users. Is this what they want? Talk to the students, talk to the women. What service do they need before we start pushing what we think they need? The process, we talked about this. How do you review the process? How do we gather the data and look at usage? Who's using it? Who's giving feedback? What are we doing with that feedback? Sharing that common data across different agencies through, most of the time, policy and legislation. Like, you know, many governments are issuing acts about sharing data. It's no longer optional. All agencies have to share data. Or how to publish data. Open standards, open data for some governments, so that that data is reused by the private sector and creating more opportunities. Infrastructure, obviously, and more focus on security. As we all know, with all that data comes the menace and the threat of bad people hacking. How do we ensure, even though we have all that data and it's open, that people are secure and there is privacy? And obviously, the capabilities to manage all that. I give some example of projects the World Bank have financed, which we're very proud of. These are our biggest success. And it's not because we finance them, but it's because through that financing, we have a window for the agencies from 5 to 8 years. The project I mentioned here in Kenya was almost 10 years old, and government agencies need that time frame to transform. It's not like the private sector. Anything below 5 years that I have seen has been a very nice pilot, but then disappeared. And so through the projects in these countries, we have helped push for capacity building, so the civil servants are trained, and they are actually the biggest champion. Once they understand how technology will change their job, they actually enjoy it instead of seeing it as a threat, but they need to go to training. They need to understand the long-term implications. I will not focus enough on strategic communications for both government, citizen, and private sector. And I think here in Bahrain, I have seen very good example in UAE of really good forward-looking communications to inform what are we doing under that smart city program, how will that impact you, etc. Mexico is a project I want to mention because it's one of the very few projects where the World Bank actually invested with the government on skills. More than 40,000 young developers were trained and accredited on skills like programming, Java, database, certification, etc. And that is, of course, with the eye on job creation and exports of ICT. Armenia is another forward-looking example where that project really didn't only tackle the government, but society. It was an e-society project. And through that project, families could, with a microcredit, get laptops and internet connection and got training on how to use the internet for accessing services, looking for jobs, or online education, which you find a lot of families, that's what they want to get the computer for. Our last project in Gabon is totally on e-health. How do you modernize public health delivery and use laptops and tablets for the frontline workers, the nurses, going around health and clinics so that they can better report on the patients, better restock for drugs and medicine, and report on results. Lots of very good stories on digital government platforms. And again, they are all enabled today with access. You've seen the first slide. Almost everybody has a mobile phone. How do we create these mobile apps, not just for sports and entertainment, but to tap on government services, to tap on specific e-learning, or to ask questions from public health officials? So really, mobile app for public service delivery is an area that I can't stress enough. Innovation is needed. And this is where we need to embed in public agencies the innovators from the public sector who are mindful of not only profit, but sustainable development. The priorities differ for each government. I just talked about the mobile apps ecosystem. We started such a project in Lebanon, trying to tap on the universities, the American university, but also the diaspora network Lebanon has with the US and with other countries. And we're really trying to see how it works to bring in a country people who have done it elsewhere in the private sector and help government. Again, life cycle management is a must for all governments, really rethinking the registration of citizens from birth to death and how to improve that fast, especially with the young people who get a bit impatient sitting in offices and filling forms. Smart city applications, one of the biggest and fastest moving demand that we are seeing. And I just give you a small summary from Vietnam, where we had 3 cities come up with a smart city strategy and plan. Each one did it on its own. One did it perfect, the other one not that great, and one was in the middle. You can guess the one that did it perfect had the most tourists and was really a hub for foreigners to come and visit. The others were maybe not that popular with foreigners. But when you're working on smart cities, work on a bigger plan for all the cities. Even though each city may have something that is particular to it, a bigger picture for all smart cities so it's easier to roll out. And of course, the very obvious, to me, what is a quick win is e-learning, digitizing the content, especially for the Arab region where we need a lot of content. Sharing it across countries is so needed, useful, and a quick win. So this is it for now, and I look forward to hearing from you on the question and answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Sadiq Musa. I'm from Multimedia University in Malaysia. Thank you very much indeed for good presentation. Actually, I used to know about digital divide, which is usage of the ICT from region to region or community to community. But I have seen something new, digital dividends. Can you please explain more about digital dividends? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is an excellent question. The digital dividend in this report is really all this services and wealth that didn't exist before digital. So it's things, for instance, the contribution of the ICT sector to the GDP of a country, which we are starting to calculate. It is the amount of innovation that is created within a country, really measured by the ICT industry. And I think the last October, there was a very good report from McKinsey on the Arab world, and it ranked all the countries. I think Bahrain, Qatar, and UAE came first, but it's really how is digital innovation existing in each country, how many entrepreneurs, how many new companies, It's a bit borrowing from the Knowledge Economy Index that Professor Allam talked about, how many patents are provided. And it also looks at digital in each sector. How much new stuff is happening, let's say, on transport because of intelligent transport system. How much in health because of digital health. So it really tries to measure all this extra wealth and services and opportunities that now exist because of digital.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your beautiful presentation. Najat Wahlega, I'm the IEEE Women in Engineering, Saudi Arabia Section East. My interests really focus on countries like in Africa where they don't have even electricity or internet. Networking is important and connectivity is important. In the past, MIT and Harvard have worked on $100 computers. Are you supporting such projects? And could you please give me some statistics? Because it's important to really bring technology everywhere, even in place where they don't have electricity or money to really afford even a computer. Thank you very much.
This is an excellent question. Thank you for it. And I think IEEE is doing a lot. We have collaborated together on a lot of knowledge sharing events. Yes, IEEE is actually a big member of the Global Connect initiative. And this initiative started 2 years ago. And basically the objective is to bring in 1.5 billion more people to the internet by 2020. So the clock is ticking, right? But there is a lot of alliance later on from it. So we see a lot of investments in last mile. And we are seeing in Africa a lot of efforts to push us, donors and government, to be smarter about it. Like, for instance, dig once policy. When you're digging for a road, where you're digging for electricity, why are you not also putting a pipe with fiber in it? So that you save 95% of the cost later, it's better for the environment, etc. We are seeing a lot of that. The example you mentioned around cost of device is still, unfortunately, very present. In a lot of our projects, I worked on a project in Rwanda, we worked with MIT on the 1 laptop per child. In some projects where we are investing with governments are free to use that particular investment towards access. And they do it either through universities or through creating common access centers, buying themselves the laptop, the servers, and trying to have digital libraries and training. And I think these efforts are those that will allow in a very poor, very remote area. The energy is a big issue. And we keep buying generators, but we are seeing more and more innovative use of solar, like, on rooftops, having solar cells, training people. It's not as big as we'd like it to see, but it's getting there. And I think by saying that and asking these questions and pushing for it, there will be more investment and sustainability in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just got very quick observation. My name is Mohammed Tawash from an accelerator here, CH9. And it regards to one of your subsidiary of the World Bank actually becomes a necessity in what we do right now, but we do not have an access to it because we come from the private sector rather than the government. In your presentation, you haven't referred by any chance to the InfoDev, which is one of the subsidiary of the World Bank. What exactly they're planning for this region, because I know the InfoDev provide quite a good schemes in the ESIF facilities, the Early Stage Innovation Fund facilities, but they do not exist in this region. What are the plans for the private sector to get benefit out of that?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And InfoDev is one of the facilities created by the bank that gives grant, and now more and more they're looking at climate finance. So what they give to the private sector, to innovators, is small grants ranking from 100,000 to $1 million per project, depending on the project and if it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You're right, they're not very present in this region. They are much more present in Africa and in Asia. I think they need to hear on the demand. I think the more we can show that demand is there and there is capabilities and there is appetite, I can put you in contact with the program manager. But for what you do, sir, the best thing is also to go through our local offices. I don't think we have a local office in Bahrain, but we have one in Dubai, and they really like to hear from the private sector. They are looking for opportunities to invest in private sector through the IFC, International Finance Corporation. So hopefully after that, if you'd like, we can exchange contacts.
Thank you. We'll take one more question here in the front. And sorry, our apologies for not being able to take more. It's just for the time. So one more questions, and then we'll call our next keynote speaker. Please.
Thanks, Samia, for a very informative presentation. As you know, I work for one of the UN agencies that's focused on investment in rural development. I just wanted two things. My name is Helen Gilman, and I work at the International Fund for Agricultural Development based in Rome. Just two quick things. The 2 billion people that you mentioned without internet access, I'm wondering if you have disaggregated that between urban and rural areas, what proportion of that 2 billion are in rural areas? And the second question also related to that, just for example, you mentioned the 1 laptop per child initiative in Rwanda, and we were also talking before about use of digital technologies along value chains, for example. What I'm wondering is, you know, when we're talking about rural areas, it's not only about lack of electricity, it's also about lack of services. For example, if a laptop breaks down, there's no one to fix it, just considering that. So I'm wondering if you could comment on, as you've seen the spread of digital technologies in rural areas, are you also seeing an associated increase in terms of private sector development to meet that need for support services?
Thank you very much, Helen. This is an excellent question. And in fact, in my experience, and I've been in that space for 15 years at least, sustainability is impossible without private sector. Because all the projects that I have seen being financed by the World Bank, the only ones that are still existing are the ones where private sector picked up. So the example I gave on rural telecenters, almost all that haven't later on been managed by a private operator or through a PPP, they have disappeared. And the computers are, no longer usable or succumb to viruses or, sad stories. So there is a way to create new jobs also in the rural areas and keep people in the rural area and keep them happier there and making more money if they get access to services and to information. Because most of them are migrating to the cities because there's no jobs, there's no information. So if you manage to bring to them the information, they will create an ecosystem of jobs. I'm working now on Burkina Faso, and it's like the 6th poorest country. And I've been working on that country for 4 years, and you'll be amazed of new jobs that started just to be created. Every time I go there, I see people working in spaces that didn't exist 4 years ago. And repair and maintenance, even though it's not the most attractive field, is somehow one of the most lucrative. For every 50 device that we use, whether it's a phone, a printer, a scanner, there will be 1 job created. And so lots of smart governments are creating vocational skills or are reforming vocational skills to have more around maintenance of renewable energy like solar panels, electricity, lots of new jobs created for electricians, for people connecting, network engineers or cable engineers, and also repair. And I think on the data is a big issue. We get a lot of our data from ITU. There are so many companies and agencies that collect data, but there is not a comprehensive rural-urban data map, if you will. The ones who have it the most accurate are the mobile operators. And to the extent they collaborate with ITU every year on the ITU report, that would be the most accurate data that we later on borrow. And I just want to say that there are many ways to measure countries and adoption. And every year you have a new index. So if you're interested, we have compiled the latest and the greatest of all indices on our website, and I will show you the link later. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to bring this keynote session to an end now. I'm sure you'll all agree that we've had some very thought-provoking insights into digital, and I think you'd also agree that digital technologies are here to stay. I think one of the challenges that universities, and I'll make reference to the university sector as an academic, I think one of the challenges we have is actually to make sure that the students that we work with and the graduates that we develop, actually that we develop them with the attributes that they need to work in industries that don't actually yet exist. And I think that's one of the big challenges that we have, is to make sure that the graduate attributes, their approach to work ethic, the skills, the knowledge that they gain, all are essential building blocks to support the economic growth of the future in industries and in jobs that, as I said, don't exist. So please do join me in thanking Samia for an outstanding presentation and some really interesting, thought-provoking questions.
I would like to thank the panel for answering all the questions and for the audience for asking them. And now I would like to call Professor Abdullah Al-Hawaj, Professor Mansour Al-Ali, and Professor Allam to present a token of appreciation for our keynote speaker. Miss Samia M MELHEM.